What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. And we do this by highlighting the practitioners in the field that make this the best job in the world. And we have literally the best strength and conditioning coach in the professional setting. Justin Lovett of the LA Rams won the NSCA Professional Strength Coach of the Year. Justin, you've been doing this. First of all, fantastic first name, brother man. We got two Justins on the show, but you've been doing this literally as long as I've been in college. Thank you for coming on and allowing me and our listeners to learn from you.
I appreciate you and the things you're doing for our field and having me on, man. It's cool.
So everybody all right, working in the NFL obviously seems awesome. You worked at Purdue before that. And I had a conversation with Milo the other day, and he's talking about some of the big differences from college to pro. What is your experience like, and then recommendation to anybody that is doing that jump, considering that jump, and wants to learn more about it?
Well, I think sometimes in college, first of all, there's a lot more commands given, and that's directives from the head coach down. And so a lot of it revolves around culture, discipline, accountability, and your tenets of how you're building a program from the head coach's lens. In that seat as the head strength conditioning coach or an assistant, sometimes there's what we would call activity without achievement, be it physical, be it organizationally. You're worried about what they wear, how they wear it, how they present themselves. You're also worried about what they look like after the lift. Are they sweating? Did you leave them on the ground? Are they complaining? What's the locker room situation? All those are blended within the realm of performance in college. So is it pure from a strength conditioning standpoint? Field metrics, strength and power metrics? No, it's not, because there's a lot of other things that go into it. Team runs at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., team lifts, and it gets blended and somewhat fuzzy from an audit standpoint when you're looking to gauge whether or not you have successful outcomes based on the schematics that you lay out in the weight room and on the field. What are you judged on? Wins and losses. Did you get blown off the ball at the line of scrimmage when you're playing Iowa or Penn State or whoever? Or did you have a nice run game? Did you stay relatively healthy? Do you have a robust and deep roster that you can plug and play when guys get chewed up? So I think it's very difficult to navigate that space. However, on the flip side, in the NFL, I would classify the NFL as, depending on the situation that you're in, it's pure. So you're not playing games with selected strategies how to optimize performance. You are making a play call. You are auditing that play call for effectiveness based on metrics. And then at the end of the day, your report card comes out in terms of player availability. Now, those all carry a little bit more weight in the NFL because you don't have an endless supply of $20 million players. So the stakes are a little higher. But in the same sense, you can have all that in terms of limited injuries and great audits from your strength conditioning and your field programming, return to play criteria. But if you don't win, guess what? It's the same as college. Nothing matters. You have the best strategies. You're sound. The players value and you trust you and your staff. But if you don't win, they're probably not around, and neither are you. So there are stark differences, but I would classify as pure. That word comes to mind when I'm talking about the NFL. It's really a pure setup. If you work for the right head coach, the right organization, where you're allowed to keep the main thing.
And that's kind of what I see from an outsider's perspective is the world of NLI for colleges is like, man, these kids want to get paid and be professional, but they're not being held to the same standard. Like you guys all have certain things in the NFL. And that's where that word pure does just kind of jump out to me, where maybe that's what's going to start to happen. And I'm not here to speculate, but the NFL does seem pure. Like, hey, this is what we're doing. We have rules and regulations. We know what we got to do. Let's just go execute it.
Yeah, that's well said. With college kids, sometimes they're awarded opportunities without, I mean, they've earned it in high school. They've earned the opportunity to be at whatever school you're at. But in the same sense, if they haven't earned the right to uh, command the attention of their own team because they don't have the stripes that comes with performance on the field, well, there's always, it seems there's a maturity standpoint that you're dealing with. You're helping them understand the realities of what big time university sports is. I'll remember a conversation where, a coach told a player, you're not a whether it was SEC or Big Ten conference caliber player at this level, and the player, I'm starting for you, so therefore I am. And what the coach was referring to is the work ethic, the physical traits, comparatively speaking to other teams in our conference. And what the player was referring to is, I'm here, and if I'm not good enough, we'll play somebody else. And that player knew based on a roster that, and that player was young in his mindset, but he wasn't wrong. So there was a definite disconnect in how coaches and players can communicate, especially, and that was before you know, all the money and the free agency that goes in college football. In the NFL, it's all understood. And if it's not understood walking in the door from a first or a second round pick it will be understood quickly, because in the NFL, it doesn't matter how you got here. It matters if you can stay. It matters if you can help the team. It matters if you can justify your money. And it doesn't just matter um, it matters week to week. It matters year to year, and it's unrelenting, that pressure from a professional standpoint. And that's a major difference, and that's a major, um, um, I guess that's a major point of contention, I think, when you're comparing college athletes who get paid sometimes more than NFL minimum roster players do, to what goes on, what the realities are in the NFL, in our locker room, and from a week to week or off season to training camp to in season, um, situation.
How sobering is it for kids to go from rosters that are 120 down to active roster 53, dressing 48, and 32 organizations? And I mean, maybe there's 64, Power Five schools. And the reason I ask this is for any coaches working in those fields that are or those teams that are working with college football players that are like, oh, I'm going pro, I'm going pro. And it's just like, what's the best way to communicate the sobriety of the NFL to them?
Oof. When they get here, it's either everything's cool until you get on the grass. The weight room's cool. Everybody's got traits: strength, power, mobility, explosiveness. When you're running choreographed drills or reactive drills that don't involve a ball and don't involve somebody across from you. But the minute we're getting ready to start phase two, which is coaches being able to interact with our players, and then phase three is where they can line up across from each other. The minute that happens and they can stack themselves up with somebody else who's older, who's done it, who came from another team, um, who is their position, who is them, that's when reality hits. Everything's cool up until that point. The draft parties,
Hmm.
you get the gear, I mean, you're floating on a cloud, and then reality hits when you get on the grass against somebody that you're competing against, and you get to watch them move, and you're counting their reps. You're also counting roster spots. So I don't know the best way to communicate that to a college player. I thought I had an advantage maybe when I was in Denver for a little bit.
Yep.
I coached high school and got a chance to volunteer, worked as an intern after volunteering, and then caught on full time as an assistant in Denver underneath Rich Tootin for a couple of years, and then went 9 years in college. And I thought maybe I would have an advantage being able to talk some sense into these kids who had a false sense of confidence about what was next for them. And it didn't resonate. It was, when you're talking to a young athlete who's testing their superpowers, they've never encountered something that they couldn't handle across from them. in that space. They've always been the most dominant, and typically those 3 to 5% are still the same most dominant at your school. They haven't encountered failure. They haven't encountered somebody telling them that's not going to cut it. That's not good enough. They haven't seen that, and they won't see it. They really won't see it until they get to the NFL, because your coaches aren't going to say that.
Yeah.
They might have real conversations, but that player hasn't physically experienced those settings. So for them, it's make believe. Yeah, maybe when they get to the Senior Bowl, or maybe when they get into the playoff. But to think that whatever I can say is going to truly humble them and make them or allow them to be more prepared mentally for the next level is, we're still searching. And I'm sure college coaches might have different answers, but I'd still be searching for those answers. Those are tough conversations.
You brought up the time in the Broncos and then getting into college, going from assistant to director. You did that jump, and we have listeners. A majority of our listeners right now are assistants in college. What's your recommendation to them taking that mindset shift? Because I did it myself when I went from, an assistant at Iowa to director at Towson. What do you recommend? What are, looking back on your career and your transition?
I think what separated myself from maybe others in the field is I had no aspirations to be a head strength coach in college or a head strength coach in the NFL. I was happy at the high school level. I got to run my own program and design lifts and runs around lesson plans, and that was great. And I thought that was awesome. Granted, you caught wind of what the NFL is like and what college could be like, being an athlete. So I thought maybe that would be appealing to be an assistant somewhere for somebody that I respected, but I never had aspirations to be a floor or a field general. So I think the advice would be, as everybody seems to say when they're asked that question, is make the best of where you're at, and if it's meant to be, it'll happen. You can strategically align yourself to develop the skills and the experiences necessary to move over a chair and direct, as opposed to be an assistant. But with that comes different sets of responsibilities that you may or may not be qualified or credentialed for. Meaning, when you slide over a chair, you're talking about things that may or may not interest you, operationally, flights, circadian rhythms, nutrition, and that's a big part of performance. But that never really interests. I don't want to wear that hat. I don't want to be the nutritionist. I don't want to wear be the director of operations. I don't want to control travel. I don't have to. It's hard enough, attacking the coach's mantra of culture and designing schematics in the weight room and on the field that's going to yield positive outcomes. So I think from that lens, I've never wanted to. It's always happened, and it's always, if it was available, you can shoot your shot, but it was never an outright goal that was spoken about initially at the start of a journey. So for me, it felt a little bit more like, it came, it came, and why it came, I don't know. I don't have the most charisma or the most expertise in terms of Olympic periodizations, and I wasn't the fastest. Just versatility helped along the way, and I thought, and with that advice that I would say to younger strength coaches that may have more of a willingness to chase, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to achieve and be in a director position in this field, because it's great. But I think when you're chasing experiences and opportunities, you are inherently making yourself more versatile as a strength coach that can fill many different roles for your head strength coach, as well as, if called upon and you get your opportunity, you'll be more well-rounded because you've seen it from different perspectives. So I think chasing different, aligning yourself with different experiences and opportunities with people that have programming that are very similar to yours and ideals and philosophies, but also people that are well respected in doing things that you don't do, whether it's culture or thinking outside the box. There's some guys I really like and admire in our field that do it way differently than I do. So I listen to them all the time. And anytime they speak at the NSCA, I know I'm not good at what they do. And I know I don't agree with probably 80% of how they go about their business, but it doesn't stop me from listening to them and really focusing in on how they do business and how they interact with their teams. And if I get a chance to see them in interviews like this or at talks, it's great because it's Kurt Hester comes to mind. I mean, I love that guy because he's crazy and he has zero F's given. And I wish I could be like that as opposed to being so reactive towards what the head coach wants and what our roster wants. But this guy's made magic in this field for 20 years. So I've tried to steal people off his staff so I could sort of pick his brain without him getting mad at me. I think, Ryan Grubbs is another guy that really does it differently and from a run and lift and a periodization and performance science standpoint. And those guys, I've leaned into listening to what they say, even though if I don't agree with it. It's something you learn, good or bad, that you keep the good and throw out the bad. That
You need CEUs to remain certified. At Strength Coach Network, both of our long form education courses, Fundamentals 1 and Fundamentals 2, both have 2.0 CEUs to the NSCA in Category C. When you complete the learning and you complete the learning check, you will earn your 2.0 CEUs. That is 33% of the CEUs you need in a 3-year reporting period. Click the link down below to learn more about both courses. Are you or your athletes waking up too hot or too cold in the middle of the night? Or are you looking for a sleep tracker option that doesn't involve wearing a ring or a wrist or a watch, something on your body? Then you need to look no further than the company SleepMe. SleepMe makes chili pads, which keep your bed cold or warm depending on what you want. And they also have a tracker that will go underneath that pad so it will be able to tell how well you slept. When I did a little study on myself with the Aura Ring and with the SleepMe tracker, they were within 97% of each other, and it was actually pretty astonishing how similar the two were. I love my chili pad. It makes me sleep great. I sleep cold. I actually wake up cold now. I haven't woke up warm. And pretty much ever since I've had it, I don't like sleeping on the road because I don't have the ability to use my chili pad. Bunch of former colleagues back at Towson got it. My stepmother got it. Check it out in the link down below. If you're looking to train your athletes in person or remote, you need to make sure that you're utilizing TeamBuildr. I have had TeamBuildr since 2019 and still utilize it with my remote athletes. This makes everything simple, from the ability to program, have videos right there, wellness questionnaires. Loved being able to have it in person at the rack at Towson and being able to have it in person now at Goldfinch. This has made my life easier as a coach. If you're still printing on paper, I don't know what you're doing. If you have a different software company, again, I don't know what you're doing. Check out TeamBuildr down in the link below.
as it relates to you. And not that anything that they do is bad. It's just it might not work for us in our setting, so I don't use it. And I can't use it, or I can't understand it. So I don't want to use it if I can't understand it and coach it and sell it. So I think those are sound strategies when pursuing something down the road is getting with people you respect, learning and respecting who is across from the field from you, from different programs that you admire. I've always tried to see who gave us the hardest time on the field from maybe it's their kids just would just tough games. And does that come from the weight room or the head coach? I don't know, but there's something there. So why not investigate it? I've always thought that building assets around yourself and your program that weren't necessarily your strong suits could prove beneficial down the line when you're sliding over a chair or chasing a director role.
You've said the word culture 3 or 4 times now in the last about 20 minutes. What does the word culture mean to you?
Doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it is a line from Joe Tiller that resonated at Purdue. Being your best when your best is required is something that our head coach Sean McVay very much values. Being transparent in your actions, following through with what you say, meaning whatever you say, you have to do what you say and say what you do. I think those are sort of pillars of what could create a good culture. I think you can't go wrong with a a scenario that puts players first and is audited for successful outcomes, whatever that culture is. In the NFL, and in college, I've always followed the head coach's lead. I've never walked in the door with a binder and says, "This is our culture." I've always asked, "What's your culture? What's important to you?" And I can run with that and I can sell that. But to think that to perform in this job and touch the line, start over, let's run this whole thing back. Those are reps and sets that you'll add to your team if you're not careful, that could compromise in your injury mitigation programming. You're setting the tone. How do you measure setting the tone culturally? This is what we do. Logos up, in the weight room. How do you audit that? Are you winning games because of that? Maybe somebody thinks you are, but I think we win games because of our players and because of our coaches. And so I'm very careful not to overstep my bounds and be a culture driver unilaterally. It's always been in the best interest of what the head coach wants. I'm going to be his top lieutenant in delivering or doubling down on that message as it sits and stands in the weight room. So it resonates, and so it is authentic and genuine. If I'm running in a different way culturally, and our vocabulary and our alignment isn't top to bottom within the roster, then that means culture is more about me than it is about the head coach. The head coach defines it, whatever level you're at, and that's how I've always operated, and that's what I believe. I don't want to think that just because I tell them to take a knee at the end of a lift, really, for what? Are they gonna win the game on Monday Night Football because I told them to take a knee and something was on my heart and I hit them with it? No, there's real moments that you have in training scenarios, especially in college, that are developing life skills. And there's more frequent moments like that in college because they're developing as humans and young men, and more frequent there than there is at the professional level. But still, take a knee up on me, fellas. I have something on my heart. If I do that, it's coming from the head coach. This is what the head coach meant. This is what it looks like. And these are our expectations to follow through with what has been set out by our head coach. And I've done it that way. And so culture is an environment that you create, and follow through with. You deliver expectations on, and you follow through with if it's important to you. How you operate, what you feel is necessary and positive to your program to continue in terms of behaviors. So that's what culture is. And so, it comes from who's running the ship, who's driving the bus, and that's the head coach.
That's a super humble opinion and way to think. Have you always been that way? Like, anybody listening might be like, man, like, did something happen where like he actually had, because that does not seem A, the norm in our field, but B, the norm in society today.
Well, I've always thought that this business isn't about you. It's not about you. It never will be about you. And so it does rub me wrong sometimes when I've been involved in programs where it's a song and dance, and it's sometimes there can be an agenda or posturing or opportunities to get in front of the team, and it's never about you. Just like when the players get drafted in the NFL, it's congratulations, are in order, great, but the alignment with players and the self-serving gratification that comes with aligning yourself with the player's performance. I didn't lift one weight of any of our players at Purdue or Western Kentucky or Georgia or Denver. Didn't lift one weight, didn't squat their weight, didn't finish a set, didn't run with them. So for me to take credit for anything that they do physically, I feel is inappropriate. It's about them. And anytime I see somebody taking credit, maybe subtweeting a congratulatory post of a player with 3:30 a.m. workouts, and squat max is increased by 150 pounds in 6 weeks when he's a freshman. That's about the strength coach at that point. And it's never about us. It's always about the player. So I prefer to roll in the background. And granted, that's not going to get me a lot of jobs in the SEC or the Big Ten or whatever. And I, because there you have to be the face of sometimes recruiting. The head coach is on the road for 6 months. And so you have to be able to navigate in that space. And I thought we did an effective job doing that at the college level. But it was always coming from the head coach. It was never coming from me, because the minute it comes from me, then it's about me. It's not about me. It's about the players. And to say that we serve the players, that's cliche. We serve the players, but what about all the tweets and the social media posts that are about you? Mm-hmm. There's never one social media post that doesn't include the strength coach in the background with a cool shot of coaching or loving. I mean, that's great. That's great if it's well intended, but usually there's an agenda behind it. And I've always told players in college that don't ever let anybody take credit for what you do. Mm-hmm. In high school, don't ever let these coaches take credit for what you do to get here in the Big Ten or the SEC. You did that, and take ownership of what you did. And just like when we get to the NFL as college players, don't let any other coach, some college coach, take credit for what you did. That coach didn't lift weights. It's about you and your journey and your success. Now, there's friendships for it and relationships for it. There's a difference between some of what I'm talking about and pure, authentic, genuine relationships that you have with your players. And I feel like we have some of those, but I just find it revolting to take credit for a player's success when they did all the work.
Anybody listening to this right now, so today's the day after the first day of the NFL draft, and there's actually a lot of that going on right now on social media, where people maybe worked with an athlete for a day or two, or not a day or two, but for a cycle, getting ready for combines, and they're taking credit for things like you said. I mean, if you just develop somebody at Purdue, for 3, 4, 5 years, it's like, okay, come on now, like the struggle, like Keir had a famous saying, and maybe he took it from somebody else, but success has many fathers, failure has one, or like none, right? Nick, nobody wants to take the credit for that. And I remember feeling that. And that's why Buddy Morris calls those people personal terrorists, because they train them for a little bit. And then, okay, now it's like, okay, yeah, I gave them back to you, strength coach, like go keep them healthy. It's like, all right, bro, I'm navigating through practices, and hey, we're going over and we're playing in London. Then we're coming back and we have to be on the East Coast before we come back. The players haven't seen their families. Like, okay, you're right. It is that easy.
Yeah. It's an interesting scenario, because you do understand the business, especially private. You have to put your work out there. You have to get people talking. I work private a little bit, so I can speak on those terms. I understand how you have to promote. And would I be good at private because you have to self-promote? Probably not. And so I understand that avenue and that aspect of it. But to insert oneself in a conversation because or to be somewhat territorial of your athletes as they go private to pro day training, and then come back to your pro day, like they're going somewhere. And I encourage, and we've leaned into that. So to follow up, we've leaned into that. If a player in a college wanted to go somewhere during May, great, go do that. And then bring us back something. If you go somewhere a pro day and you come back and you're teaching for the test, those are highly specialized, highly qualified individuals and live in spaces that we don't. Bring some back, like, let me know what you did. That's great. And maybe I can have a relationship with them and not be threatened about what they do. And at the pro environment, I remember in 2011 and 2010, we were a little threatened by what was going on within a private setting, especially during the lockout. And Lauren Landau's a great friend of mine. I have a good relationship with him, and I think he's done great things when he was in Denver and out at Notre Dame and privately. But as a younger strength coach, I was like, man, all our players are going there. Why are they going there? Well, they're going there because we're not good enough. Or they just need a break from us. And once you understand that that's what it is, all right, fast forward 9 or however many years later in Los Angeles, a player wants to, and granted, the landscape is much different. A player wants to go to Huntington Beach 3D quarterback training with Adam Dato. Great. What are they doing? Man, I'm going to send my kid there. All right. Somebody wants to go to Pete Bomarito in Florida. Great. What are they doing? Did they come back healthy? And what was the best about your experience there? What's their go-to? What's their DNA? Can I call them? Leaning into that space, even in the 2021 run, we've had private speed coaches come on the field and work with our players, and it was in a setting where, like, is it not threatened? Like, who cares? It's all about serving the players. It ain't about you. What's going to help your roster be most successful in hopefully winning a game and navigating a difficult season. So do that and driving around. We have Sports Academy and here in Thousand Oaks that a lot of our players go to in the off season. I've rolled through there. It's great. And some specialists. Aaron Donald has his the strength coaches in Pittsburgh, and he's got some guys that do handshake. What are they doing that helped, that Aaron believes in? Well, I want to do some of that so then Aaron believes in what we're doing can be as effective, or at least a go-between from Pittsburgh to Los Angeles. And that mindset has allowed us to, like, I could care less. Like, if somebody wants to come in and help a player, bring me a t-shirt, dog. And if we win, great. You win too. Guess what? Because you're a Super Bowl champion as well. We have a guy that used to take care of our offensive lineman, still does. He takes care of Cooper Kupp and Puka when they need space from our facility. I can call that guy, and that guy can call me and say, "What are you doing?" I'll send you the program. There's nothing worth hiding in our industry, as opposed to, man, this is proprietary. No, it ain't.
No, it's not.
Nothing. You didn't make it up. And if you give your stuff away, which we do, then if you're better than we are at implementing our stuff, it's just as competitive as an NFL roster. Then great. Then you should probably be here. Can you get here? We'll see. But then I'm still a better coach for having shared, and a better coach for having learned. So I'll be all right. We'll go somewhere else. I'll be an assistant on somebody's staff that hopefully worked for us and doesn't think I'm a jerk, and write it out. Because at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're getting paid to help players lift weights and run, dialing up some workouts that can be somewhat effective, and be on the sidelines and watching these superstars do their thing in college or in the pros, and you get paid to do it. So get over yourself, bro. It ain't that serious. It ain't about you. Help the players, keep growing in your craft, and if you're lucky, you'll be able to hang out a while. That's our mentality. So I didn't mean to go on a rant, but it's that's what we believe.
I'm glad you did. And one of the things that you brought up now for the second time, you talked about being on the sideline. You talked about, noticing, like, okay, who gave us the most difficult time during games? What are you doing during games? My staff and we would be charting players coming in and off the field, and we'd be charting work to rest ratios so we could try to design our conditioning specifically. So I'm curious, like, what are the things that you're looking for anecdotally? Are you looking to see how the head coach is talking to the different players about, okay, there was a turnover, and how is he communicating the response, or what are the ins and outs that you're looking at?
It's, you are trying to create a little bit of safety on the sidelines with keep them back. Not everybody's present and watching the ball. They're talking to their coaches. Coaches are wrapped up and coaching one side of the ball, and the other side of the ball is out on the field. So you are get them back. There is an element of get them back, and it's not in a way that's like, look at me, I'm going to get them back. It's just keep the box clear for the head coach when he's running up and down the sideline. And really, we're trying to provide at the end of the day versus me grabbing belts. And like you mentioned, listening to how the coaches are being coached, listening to how the players are responding to the coaches or how they feel physically, so you can pass along information if needed to the sports medicine staff, or you can look for ways to help players in maybe they're anxious or they feel gassed or whatever, ways that you could help on the back end of your performance programming to help them. So you're looking for all those things. You're communicating with your own staff, but really you're trying to provide security for your officials. We were at we were at Middle Tennessee State, and our defensive coordinator, I love him. He's great. But we got 3 flags. 1 was a warning and 2 was penalties. And it was like, well, grab him. Like, man, all right. So I have a hard time. These guys are so brilliant, and the game does run away from you. And we try to. It wasn't grabbing the coach that was of most important to us. It's really providing security for the officials. So big shots or sudden change like turnovers, we'll get in front of the box and we'll run with them and move coaches and players because I know John Lott, and he was a great coach in this league for a long time. But I also remember 2008 in the Super Bowl where Larry Fitzgerald was running down Harrison Steelers and almost caught him at the 1. And you watch NFL films, you see Larry Fitzgerald getting caught up on his own sideline with one of his players, with one of his teammates. And, because he got bumped out of bounds when he's chasing down that linebacker from Pittsburgh, and he didn't catch him. He almost did, but maybe he would have caught him in the Super Bowl. I think it was the end of half situation. Yeah. I mean, that was a game changer. So that's always the worry for me versus posture or it's providing security for the officials so they don't throw a flag on us. And number 2, your guys are at least, if there is a sudden change, you're running and you're clearing the white, get them back so that they're not interfering with your own guy trying to make a play. And that Super Bowl 2008 Cardinals Steelers, for anybody that thinks that the sideline is not important, watch that clip. And that's the worst fear that you could. I'd rather get flags all day, but if I'm involved in one of those scenarios where
that's a good point.
I don't know how. And it wasn't John Lott's fault. It certainly wasn't the player's fault that because the player I think was actually off behind the first line. So and there's some times where in the Super Bowl I remember a Bengals player came off the sideline and got penalized for being in he wasn't dressed. He went to celebrate with his teammates. There's some things in this game where you cannot disparage the strength of, like, we'll get burned on that left and right. Like if somebody leaves the sideline and we're in the box, we're not going to physically grab a player. Even in college, we're not physically grabbing a player if he leaves the box. You communicate, shouldn't leave the box. And if you do, well, then coaches can deal with you. We're going to try to do our best to clear it for the officials and make sure we have an awareness on big plays up and down the field. But if you leave the box and you got Crocs and socks on, that's a penalty 10 out of 10 times. There's nothing I can do about it. And I love our head coach, but our head coach is celebrated with players in the end zone, and it's like, he's faster than me. I can't get him. And if he leaves me, I'll deal with it. And that's okay. But luckily he hasn't got a flag yet. And, but you can't extinguish the joy and the passion of what happens on the sideline when your team scores or when you're chasing a win. You can get overzealous, and that's ball. And so, I mean, I love the sideline. I love the anxiety of it. I love being in proximity to greatness and watching these guys do their thing and hearing what they say when they're in between a set or not a set, a rack of plays, I guess, or offensive possession. I like when they talk, and I like when our sideline talks, and I love that. I love all of it. And in COVID, it was the best because you hear one of our guys who has no business talking says, he's a staff member, he's not a coach. He says something to a player, and that player turned his head because there's nobody in the stadium. I loved it. I think it's great. And then he has something to say when he comes to our sideline. And it's just the competitiveness, the pettiness of it. Used to love watching the other strength coach during, game-winning field goals. You either get the, or you get the, and I watched that guy versus watch the kick go in. I love everything about it. It's great.
You talked about greatness, and you mentioned Aaron Donald. You've been around some awesome athletes, even professionally in college. What are some of you can name off who are some of the most impressive people that you've seen, but also what are some of the common traits of these high achievers that you found?
the common traits would be committed to their own. They have a process and committed to it, and they've experimented and dabbled with different routines and different strategies to help them. That doesn't mean they have a closed mindset or a fixed mindset, as our head coach would say. That it just means that they have tried. They are engaged with their performance, what they need from recovery, from strength, from power, from field, from conditioning, from mental, and they're engaged and they have a process, and they have the courage of their convictions. They got in the game doing it this way. Well, if I can't do it this way, I don't want to be in the game. This is how I came in the game. This is what made me. So for me to give that up, it's a challenge. So Aaron Donald was beyond impressive in his approach to his body physically, and I arguably think that sometimes, when with him for the last few years, if he wasn't able to train the way he liked to train, then maybe the process of practice wasn't as fun or as joyous for him, because he had an approach to push his body as hard and as fast as he could, and to really leave each day feeling like there was nothing left. And that was a challenge for us as a strength conditioning staff, because you end up trying to hurt a guy without leaving marks, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
he says, whatever your 70-minute program was and your calculated sets and reps wasn't good enough for me. So I need extra this, that, and the other. Like, man, that's a lot of volume of pushing, of pressing, of biceps, of, on his knees, of legs, of, repetitive tendon work that he's also got to go on the field and perform. So how do you do that? How do you touch all abs, hip flexors? How do you touch all that and make the athlete happy that he's satisfied with what he's put in, but also don't compromise him, or allow himself to compromise himself by doing too much. That's really the nuance of the pro game versus college. In college, you run it, you dictate it. In the pro game,
Looking to expand your education further, but you don't want to pay the massive fees of going back to school? At Strength Coach Network, we have 2 long form education courses that both cost less than one course taught to you by an online school. If you click down below to learn more about Fundamentals 1 or Fundamentals 2, you will be able to sign up for our education course that has over 20 hours of educational content brought to you by some of the biggest names in the field: Dr. Brian Mann, Zach Daycant, Jeff Moyer, Terrence Kennel, and many more inside of this course, all for less than the price of one course at a college university. Hawkin Dynamic is the best option if you're trying to get any force plate data or if you're trying to collect any isometric mid-thigh pulls. Not only can you do isometric mid-thigh pulls for the lower body, but I call it an isometric mid-thigh pull for your upper body, where you're able to do an isometric push-up into something where your back is pushing into a bar and your hands are on the force plate. I utilized Hawkins force plates and Hawkins software when I was at Towson. Still utilize it now when I'm at Goldfinch. If you're using the other competitors, I don't know what you're doing. Hawkins customer service is second to none. Hawkins software and their hardware, again, second to none. Check them out in the link down below. Are you expanding and need more equipment inside your current room? Or are you building a new weight room and you need to get some equipment? You need to look no further than Powerlift. I had Powerlift equipment when I was at Harvard, Iowa, and at the University of Maryland. I'm currently utilizing their stuff right now. I'm telling you, Powerlift strong, Powerlift made here in America, here in the great state of Iowa, made, manufactured. You have the ability for customization, whether it's on the bench, whether it's on the upholstery, whether it's on the bumpers, across the rack. There are countless options, making sure it's designed to your specific brand. It's Powerlift made, it's Powerlift strong, it's not cheap like all the other competitors, and the people inside of Powerlift are people that you want to be with. Check them out in the link down below.
it's conversations. It's these guys got to vibe with your program. If they ain't good enough, they're going to get it. And if they don't get it from you, they'll get it from somewhere else. So you have to be versed in dabbling in extra volume, extra sets, in a way that doesn't compromise your player's ability to perform, because they might want to do it tomorrow as well. And they might want to do it all 3 days, weeks 1 through 18 in season. And so what's your answer to that? I don't want to be a part of it. Or do you try to meet them where they're at and take care of them? So I think that those processes and routines and a level of engagement with yourself from a performance standpoint really is a separator. That doesn't mean they're not curious about new strategies. It just means that the top 1% that that at least I've witnessed in this game, which Aaron Donald is above and beyond anyone I've ever met. That was what made him different and separated him. And so he loved to train, but he also loved to push himself, and so that the game was easier.
You've seen, players like that are around for a while, and you had it in college, and nowadays there's the transfer portal, there's trade. So you also have to deal with athletes coming and going, and our listeners have the same exact thing. Which is more difficult to you from a 10,000 foot view, trying to help that athlete, like you said, that 1%er that's been with you for 6 years and you have to keep adapting and you have to keep growing, versus taking somebody that has maybe a bunch of different backgrounds because they've been at a bunch of different organizations, and then getting them on to training and being a team? Like, which one is harder, more challenging, rewarding, whatnot?
Well, that's an interesting question. We believe that each year is its own year. So just because we ran something in 2021 and we had some success on the field doesn't mean anything to a 2023 roster with 40 rookies or 2024 with 40 rookies. You do have a blueprint that you follow, and we do break off our lifts into position specific, and each position specific program has its own path or life. We do have alignment and core, or primary strength and power movements, but at the end of the day, auxiliary movements, if it's a eccentric emphasis, if we're an offensive player versus a mobility emphasis, if we're a defensive player, we're talking offensive and defensive alignment, or unilateral rotational explosives for a defensive back, or whatever the roster needs is what the roster is going to get. So to answer your question, each year that we've been together, I think our veteran players have experienced evolution in the blueprint program that we follow for that position group, Aaron Donald included, and that's coming from ideas that I've gotten from him, from his personal trainers, from his strength coaches, from what he values, from what he needs on the field, and the same thing with some of our other players. Now, we're sort of built because every year is its own year to accept a free agent, a guy that got added week 4. Or your program should be friendly enough and simple enough that somebody can come in and navigate through it to a certain extent right off the rip. If you're doing things that are too complex and I have to start you at week 1, this player, the rest of your position groups at week 8, I got you start you at week 1 because that's the progression. That player might not get to week 8. That player might be here for 4 weeks. So that type of system isn't feasible to operate within any college or NFL setting. I have 3 players on week 1, 2 players on week 3, and then the rest of the roster on week 1, let alone the modifications that you have. This guy can't squat. This guy, his bench has to be modified because of a wrist. This guy doesn't catch his cleans. Well, we don't clean here. We don't catch cleans, I guess. So we've mitigated that. But I think if I'm answering your question, they're equally challenging, but I wouldn't say one is more difficult than another. You are always evolving in this league and staying fresh and adapting your program to fit your roster so that your guys that have been with you the whole time, they know the meat and potatoes what you're probably going to throw down on paper for them to work through. But you're always moving, and you're always, if you listen to your players, they're going to write some of your workout for you because they will resonate with certain movements over others, more friendly modalities than others. And I'm always game to learn from our players and change lifts to accommodate them if we can audit, if we can run it back to see if this was a targeted modality. If we wanted a power movement, well, did that create the bar speed that we wanted? Did we improve on it in whatever block that we were working on? If the answer is yes, then keep it. Who cares of what we did in 2020? Because this group loves it, and this group's getting benefit from it. So, yeah, I'd say come full circle. I'd say it's equally challenging to handle both ends of your roster like that.
And one of the things that I've also heard from one of my friends working in the NFL is the fact that like the in season is actually the not the off season, but it's the longest, most concentrated amount of time that you have them, and that's when you can have your progressions and your regressions. From a 10,000 foot view, like navigating that, where was that switch for you? Because you were in college where you did have a more traditional off season versus the different restrictions in the NFL. How did you quickly learn how to adjust to that and accommodate within everything that you have now?
The challenge was the lack of a runway for sure. In 2011, I think that was the lockout year. So prior to that, we had 14-week off seasons, and then you had your mini camps and team activities. But that was a long runway for physical development, and it mirrored what happens in college with your winter and your spring program, minus the few weeks that you have for spring ball and spring practice. But you also have Maymester and summer as a runway to camp. Here, you have you don't have that runway. You have 2 weeks with strength conditioning in phase one on the field and in the weight room, and then it's weight room only because the coaches got them. So it's similar to what we have going on in season. Thankfully, our coaches, our head coach has provided us with opportunities to lift and develop players in camp and in season. So it's a very friendly, performance minded staff when it comes to strength conditioning. Our head football coach has a performance mindset, and our director of performance, Reggie Scott, does a phenomenal job of creating an identity, weekly identities, daily identities. So we match our stressors, highs high and lows low. And within that framework, we feel like we can chase a little bit. We can go. We don't have to follow a don't screw them up mentality, which sometimes can exist in the league. Just don't hurt them. If some teams wanted a guy stronger and faster, they'll cut a guy to get somebody stronger and faster. The Rams do believe in development, which is why I love working for these coaches and for Reggie Scott and for Les Snead. Is they do have a development mindset. It's important to them, and they do allow us opportunities to develop and to chase strength gains, and we're not fearful of things happen in the weight room. You start pulling 500 pounds off the ground, you might have a tight back. You allow these guys to eat in the weight room, you might come across a tight pec. And when I first got here, it was apparent. I mean, you look at the context of anybody listening that is chasing a job, it's important to understand the context of why they're talking to you. The Rams had tremendous success with their previous staff. They went to a Super Bowl. So why are they talking to me from a 4-8 school in the Big Ten? We went 4-8. Our two best players got hurt on the same play versus Northwestern, and that compromised our season. We fought hard, but we're 4-8. Why do the Rams want to talk to you? Well, maybe the Rams wanted to talk to me because I'm a college guy at that point, and college guys let them eat. So when we got here, we weren't restrictive. We would fix what we deemed good meals for them in the weight room, and we would allow them to eat. And if they ate too much and something happened from it, I'd rather wear that than fight a player on you're doing too much or be restrictive and kick them out of the weight room. And so that it's just how you're going to get caught one day in this business of something goes wrong. Not every play call works, but how do you want to go? If you're going to go down, how do you want to go down? I'd rather go down being who I said I was going to be or who I was hired to be by keeping the main thing the main thing. We're not building strength. We're not building power, but we're allowing access to these premium attributes at more frequent times in the year with consistent and systematic periodization. But that does include letting these guys eat, man, and not being so refined and selective that I have to kick them out and not provide opportunities. Not everybody's going to resonate with the performance science heavy lens. There's a blended approach here where performance science meets strength conditioning, and it's still football. And we do understand that if I'm not here tomorrow, guess what? The Rams are still going to kick off in September. Hopefully, they're still going to make the playoffs. They might win the Super Bowl. So, well, they need to view us and our strength conditioning crew as assets that can help them in their journey, keep them healthy, get them stronger, get them have more strength endurance, help them get in better shape throughout different points in the year. We know those traits are perishable skills, so they don't have access to them at all times throughout the year. But our job is to hopefully program more frequency in terms of access to those attributes. So that's where we're at.
For you, and you've moved around, and we talk about family and being able to pour into your significant other. What has been the key success for you in your life outside of being a coach in the the four walls of your weight room and on the field?
The identity of it is when I leave here, I don't feel like just feel like a guy sliding into the coast in Southern California, just another random guy. And I think that's easier having an identity of just your whoever, your dad, your husband, and or you're trying to be a good dad, you're trying to be a good husband, all those things. I mean, I definitely enjoy the perks of that comes with being associated with the Los Angeles Rams, but at the end of the day, just slide into the coast and being just whatever, and understand that nobody cares about you or what you do. So that's been always cool. It probably is a little bit more of a struggle, in a smaller college town where you're supposed to do different things. And I'm not saying it was, you had to be the face of certain, but there was a little bit more of a smaller town feel. And I remember at Georgia, it was, I went to the dentist once, and it was, where are you from? Denver. I'm from Ohio, but I just lived in Denver. Well, why are you here in Athens? I work for the athletic department. What do you do? I work in the weight room. Which team? Football. Oh, and then it was like, man, I'd rather I don't want to be in front when we win. I don't want to be in front when we lose. It's easier just to slide off and be, and not get so wrapped up in your job and be the strength coach at home. And I've been accused of doing that with, my wife will tell me, don't boss me around, or the kids. I can't even work out my own kids. I have to outsource that. So I would, if we were close, I'd send them to you because they don't listen to me. You know what I mean? So it's just having, if you're truly humble in what you do, and you understand that it is that you work in a game, and it doesn't feel like work because you're not clocking in, clocking out. It's just sliding off into the coast or into the community and just being whoever. I think that's helped. And it's not perfect by any means, but that's what I've tried to do the whole time up, and not be the not wear the logo, I guess, when you leave here, like you're more important than somebody that's coaching high school. I came from the high school ranks. I coached there and taught there for 4 years. So I've always felt like I'm just lucky to be at this level. So high school coach was being a high school coach was very important to me, and it serves me to this day in terms of strategies and how I communicate and how I view professionals in this business. So I don't think I'm special in any means, or never have thought I was special in any means. Just always thought that I was lucky to be in the profession, and I get a chance to work with some premium athletes and great coaches, and it's football. So that's how I've operated, and it's worked so far. Maybe give me a couple more years and we'll talk later.
We want to respect your time. One of the last questions I have for you is, what would be kind of an echoing or a final message that you want strength and conditioning coaches to listen to and hear? We have college, private, pro, a good spectrum of coaches. So you have the ability to talk to a lot of people here. What would be kind of a billboard moment, for lack of a better term, that you want them to hear?
Well, I love where the profession's at. And I love the fact that we just got done talking about people subtweeting or attaching themselves to players with maybe that have an ulterior agenda. But what we didn't talk about is how much content people are putting out there for everybody to see. It used to be in 2011 or 2012, that nobody was putting their successes and failures on tape, their thoughts, their exercise prescriptions, their methodologies. Nobody was really doing any of that. So it was all, you were always experimenting in the dark and writing little programs that nobody could audit and for effectiveness. Now these younger coaches and older coaches are putting out exercise progressions, regressions, their entire performance plan, their views on culture. They're putting it out there on social media and on Instagram and Twitter, and I love it. And I'm not able to maybe comment on things because it might be hot takes, but I love the hot takes that go with this industry too, and I see it all. And it's like, I mean, I troll for that stuff. I love it when guys, we talked about people we do respect here, but there's also people like, man, these guys are clowns. I love watching all their stuff too, because I'm learning, oh man, that actually, like, I think he's a clown, but that's really cool. I'm going to do that. And, or he explained why he's doing that. So now, well, whatever he's doing, that's not such a clown show anymore. I've learned to understand and recognize the context that he's in. And so I love where the business is at in terms of exploration, and we see all the content that's out there, and our players do too. And that's the other thing. So when our players see it, our players have just as much right to dictate how they train as me or you. It's kind of like when your kids go to school. You have a right to what your kids, experience from their teachers and their educators. Why do you have a right? Are you an educator? No, but you've went through school. So you have a justified opinion of going through the 6th grade. So our players, in my opinion, have just as much right to dictate some of what they deem is helpful from a performance lens as I do. And a lot of what they see and a lot of what they put out is sometimes performance training methodologies and exercise. And I think it's cool. I really do. I think it moves us along as an industry faster. And I love stealing from some of the smart people in this business and sort of trying to become a smart person in this business one day. So that's just another avenue to gain insight on college programming, private programming, football training, soccer, baseball, all of it. I love it. Throwing, it's great. So if anybody's listening, I hope you do that and you keep doing what you're doing. And these people are unafraid of people, making fun or people, dissension and disagreement. I love the fact that these people are so passionate about they could care less about your disagreement. And the best part about this business is we can justify anything or anything. And so I probably wouldn't put something out on Instagram or Twitter because of the backlash. I wouldn't want that sort of target, but I respect madly other people that do. And I think it's great when they say, you know what, why are we doing this combine testing? We should do this, that, and the other. Man, that's great. Maybe that could be a way, maybe a training block for a week 2, day 1 field session. I don't know. I just think that the industry is in a good place, and there's some bright minds in this field, and it's advancing faster than it ever has. And I'm glad to be along for the ride.
That's awesome. Love hearing the positivity, Coach. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch.
Appreciate you, man.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.